An office worker named Kenshi Yamada had just finished a game. However, he didn't seem satisfied with it. He wanted a new game that was more challenging and difficult to complete. While searching for games on the internet, he came across a website that offered an endless game. The game had several difficulty levels, one of which was Hell Mode, the highest difficulty level. For his character class, he chose to be a summoner with a slave social status. After making several adjustments, he started playing without hesitation. Suddenly, he was reincarnated into another world and was given the name Aaron by his father. Although he was born into the lowest caste family, Aaron remained grateful and looked forward to the new challenges in his life. A year passed. Aaron still couldn't speak, but he could already think clearly and understand what others were saying. His father was a hardworking family head named Rodin, while his mother, Teresia, was a beautiful and very kind woman. At the moment, Aaron was their only child, but seeing how much his parents loved each other, he assumed it was only a matter of time before he had a sibling. At night before going to sleep, Aaron tried to open his status window. Even though life as a toddler was quite enjoyable, he remembered that he was supposed to become a summoner. After several attempts, he finally managed to open his status through a book. His level was still at 1, and his class was summoner, just as he had chosen. Because his level was still low, he could only summon weak creatures like insects. However, even summoning insects was still difficult. He first had to use a creation skill before performing a summon. The next day, his father went to work cutting down trees, while his mother washed clothes in front of the house. During the day, Aaron was taken care of by his mother. When he finally had some time alone, he immediately opened his book to continue the summoning he had failed the day before. Using his summoner skill, he tried to summon an insect. What appeared was a large grasshopper. Unfortunately, it was just a foolish creature that wouldn't obey his commands. Even so, Aaron's status increased, and he named the grasshopper Denka. Sadly, not long after being summoned, the grasshopper disappeared after being accidentally stepped on by his mother. Soon after, his parents returned to their duties. Rodin went hunting with the villagers, while Teresia worked on the farm. After several days of experimenting with his skills, Aaron tried to summon a beast called Ringer. However, what appeared was only a mouse, just as foolish as Denka. Even so, at least the mouse obeyed commands. The difference was that Denka had jumping ability, while the mouse named Korosk had running ability. Seeing this, Aaron assumed that this world was filled with powerful monsters with various abilities. For now, he could increase his status by storing 10 creature cards. By doing so, he could gain XP and become far stronger than any ordinary child. Not long after, Rodin returned home covered in blood. However, it was only the blood of his prey, and he was completely unharmed. He then invited Aaron to see the results of the hunt. On the way, they saw a flock of birds flying freely. According to Rodin, those birds symbolized true freedom. Before long, they arrived at the slaughter site. The boar monster was much larger than Aaron had expected. Up close, it looked extremely terrifying. The villagers welcomed Rodin warmly, as he had contributed the most to the hunt. On that occasion, Rodin also introduced Aaron to the neighbors. Curious, Aaron asked whether the giant boar was strong. Gerda explained that the wild boar was quite tough and required at least 20 people to subdue it. As time passed, Aaron's abilities gradually improved. He was now able to create stronger creature cards. However, during his first attempt, he failed. He couldn't create anything despite having full energy. At another time, he finally succeeded by combining the cards Yonta and Mogoski, creating a new creature card, a G-rank bird. He named it Cappy. Its ability was to mimic sounds, which could be used to deceive enemies. Meanwhile, Yonta had a provocation skill, and Mogoski had the ability to dig holes. Unexpectedly, Mogoski could dig a large hole in a short time, causing Aaron to fall into it. However, summoning creatures like them was still not enough to fight monsters. Besides that, Aaron didn't have much time to summon more creatures because he was often invited to play by children his age. Especially in mock night battles, during one of those games, Aaron felt something was strange. Krina's movements were faster than his. Not only that, Krina's swordsmanship was so strong that Aaron's wooden sword broke. At that time, Teresia was pregnant with her second child. Seeing his mother struggling, Aaron offered to help with farming. However, since he was still young, Teresia refused. Even though Aaron's stamina was already comparable to an adult's, his parents still didn't allow him to work, as it wasn't the right time for someone his age. According to Rodin, the help Aaron already provided at home was more than enough. Aaron remembered that his family was trapped in the slave class. He also realized that farming was far more exhausting than household chores. Because of that, he changed his mind and chose to follow his parents' wishes. During winter, Aaron returned to training his summoning skills. This time, he was able to summon creatures for an entire day without problems. However, in the middle of his training, Krina suddenly invited him to play sword fighting again. In that match, Aaron was still overwhelmed by Krina's superior abilities. Not long after, Rodin returned home. As Teresia welcomed her husband, she suddenly fell in shock after seeing the grasshopper Arn had summoned. She began to feel contractions in her stomach. Panicking, Rodin immediately told Krina to call her mother. It seemed that Teresia would soon give birth to her second child. In his previous life, Orn had never played any midwife simulation games, so he couldn't do much to help his mother. Fortunately, Krina's mother arrived just in time and assisted with the delivery until Teresia safely gave birth. After the baby was born, Rodin named the child Marin, inspired by the name of a monster he was familiar with. In this world, every child who turns 5 must participate in an appraisal ceremony. This ceremony is attended by all social classes. If a child is found to have talent, even a slave like Oren could be freed from slavery. Besides Oren, Krina would also take part in the ceremony. She was very excited and hoped to have talent as a swordsman so she could become a knight. Upon arriving at the appraisal site, Oren saw people from commoner families. He didn't expect the ceremony to be held together like this. It made him nervous, especially since everyone else looked neatly dressed. When everyone had gathered, the evaluators explained that in this country, there had once been a hero who came from the slave class. That was why all children, regardless of status, were required to participate. After the speech, all participants entered the room. There, Arn saw a statue of the creator god, the same one who had once sent him a message. The appraisal ceremony then began. The village chief's son was the first to be called. By touching a crystal ball, his talent and attributes were immediately displayed. The format was exactly the same as the status page in Arn's book. The result showed that the village chief's son had a talent for being a merchant, which made the chief extremely happy and proud. However, not all children were destined to have talent. Some were unfortunate and had none at all. When it was Krina's turn, something astonishing happened. As her talent was assessed, the crystal ball shone brightly and her attributes far exceeded the average. It turned out she had the talent of a sword king, one of the greatest. Everyone was shocked, never expecting a sword king to appear in such a remote village. Meanwhile, Krina's father was overjoyed and proudly celebrated in front of everyone. Arn was the last child remaining. When his talent was tested, something unusual occurred. The crystal ball dimmed and then shone very brightly. However, the result was extremely disappointing. Arn was declared to have no talent, and his stats were nothing special. Arn realized this was due to a system error, but there was nothing he could do except accept it calmly. In a gentle tone, his father invited Arn to go home, as his mother was waiting. Rodin tried to comfort him, saying that talent wasn't important and that even without it, Arn was still their pride and joy. From this event, Arn learned one thing in this game-like world. He was the only one playing in hardcore mode. The other children should have been at level 1 like him, but because his progress was only 100th of normal, his displayed stats showed only a small fraction of his true value. Instead of giving up, Arn became even more determined to conquer the game and prove that everything would be easy for him. The next day, Arn noticed something strange about his father. Rodin seemed unusually upset. As usual, Arn and his family visited Krina's house to celebrate her achievement as a sword king. However, Rodin began arguing upon arrival, which offended Krina's father and led to a confrontation. Arn and Krina wanted to stop the fight, but they didn't need to do anything, as both fathers turned out to be more obedient to their wives. After things calmed down, it was revealed that Rodin wanted to cut ties with Gerda's family. He felt unworthy of associating with them now that Krina had such a bright future. Curious, Arn asked Gerda's wife whether they always fought like that. She explained that after having children, their personalities had softened, even though they used to be hot-tempered and often got into fights. Teresia added that the 4 of them had actually grown up in the same village. 10 years ago, they heard news about the opening of a new settlement, so they worked together to build their homes, which is why their houses looked similar. The next day, Gerda received news that knights would come to meet Krina. While she was playing with Arn, she was called to the village center. Not long after, the knights arrived. Krina was thrilled. After 3 years of playing pretend as knights, she could finally meet real ones. However, since she was still young and had never used a real sword, Gerda refused to hand her over. The knight captain accused them of falsifying the appraisal results. To prove that Krina was truly a sword king, they arranged a duel. Although Gerda was worried, Krina stepped forward without hesitation and faced the vice captain. Despite fighting an adult, she was able to match him. During the battle, she awakened her sword king abilities and achieved a decisive victory. This convinced everyone that she was the real sword king. Gerda laughed in relief, grateful that her daughter was safe and had proven her strength. The knight captain then praised him for raising such a talented child. Bowing his head, he apologized for his earlier rude behavior. He acknowledged Krina's extraordinary talent and expressed his desire to discuss her future. Krina was also allowed to bring her friends if it made her more comfortable, so they gathered at the village chief's house. Aaron understood why the knight captain and the chief's son were there, but he was puzzled to see another talented child, one with an axe ability and his father present as well. Soon after, the knight captain introduced himself as Zenab. He explained that he had been sent by a baron to confirm the appearance of a sword king. After witnessing the duel, there was no doubt. As a result, the border village originally to be named after the village chief would be renamed Krina Village in honor of her. Zenab also shared that 3 years ago, a supposed sword master had appeared in the Khan family and served the royal household, but it turned out to be an exaggeration as the person was only an ordinary swordsman. Since then, many nobles had been found to overstate appraisal results. That was why he apologized for putting Krina through such a harsh test. He further explained that at the age of 12, Krina would study at an academy and later serve directly under the royal family. At the same time, the father of the child with axe talent introduced his son, hoping he could become a knight. However, Zenab seemed more interested in Rodin, who was known as a village legend for his major contribution in hunting the giant boar. Zenab greatly admired the hunting result and respected Rodin for his hard work and dedication. After a long time, Aaron's summoning skill finally leveled up. Now he had several new skills and the ability to summon F-rank creatures had been unlocked. This level up made Aaron extremely excited. He was truly thrilled and hoped that one day he would be able to summon powerful creatures like dragons. 2 years later, Teresia became pregnant with her third child. To ease his mother's burden, Aaron helped with household chores such as cleaning and washing dishes. Because the baby's kicks felt gentle, Teresia assumed the next child would be a girl, according to her agreement with Rodin. This time she would choose the baby's name. While discussing names, Aaron accidentally opened his book and read the name Elmia. Hearing this, his father immediately scolded him, as it was the name of a god and should not be spoken carelessly. To change the subject, Aaron brought up his father's healed wound. Rodin explained that he had passed a god's trial during his recent hunt. According to him, it was a special moment that occurred while hunting. However, from Aaron's perspective, it was clearly a level up. Even though he couldn't see his father's status, Aaron believed Rodin had a high level due to his experience as a wild boar hunter. In front of his father, Aaron said that he wanted to join the hunt, but Rodin firmly refused. Hunting was not a game, it was extremely dangerous. Before going to sleep, Aaron experimented with his skills. He summoned a grasshopper whose status had been enhanced. At that moment, Teresia entered the room, startled. She stepped on the grasshopper again. Even so, Aaron realized that the enhancement effect on the card was permanent. The next day, Rodin went hunting, while Teresia, who was pregnant, did housework with Aaron's help while preparing to wash clothes. Aaron reflected on his previous failed experiment combining insect and animal cards hadn't produced a new type. However, when he combined an insect card with a bird card, he successfully unlocked a new type, a plant-type card, although its appearance was unimpressive. The plant had an MP-related ability that increased Aaron's mana capacity. This allowed him to conduct more experiments in a day and accelerate his leveling process. To test it, Aaron summoned the creature. Because it resembled an apple, he named it a Po. Its skill, Roma, allowed it to turn into a seed and sprout, releasing a fragrant scent. Not long after, Teresia called Aaron for lunch. Seeing new sprouts growing around the house confused her, while Aaron pretended not to know anything. Later that day, Aaron trained swordsmanship with Krina. Although he still lost, Krina noticed that Aaron had become stronger. This was because his sword skill had reached level 3 in the afternoon. Aaron continued his throwing practice routine. However, even after more than 20,000 throws, his throwing skill didn't level up because of that. He decided it was better to focus on leveling his summoning abilities. At the same time, he noticed plants growing near their house, likely the effect of Apo's Roma skill. That night, Teresia and Aaron grew worried because Rodin was late returning home. Soon after, Rodin was carried back by villagers in critical condition. According to witnesses, he had been gored by a wild boar as first aid. Gerda had given him a Mueller's flower, but Rodin had not fully recovered due to the severity of his injuries. Gerda explained that the incident was caused by reckless villagers a few days earlier. They had been summoned by the village chief to join the hunt because boar meat was valuable. Since the knights had previously acknowledged Rodin's abilities, they felt safe hunting alongside him. In truth, Gerda had opposed letting amateurs join, but he couldn't refuse the chief's orders. Worse still, before the hunt, those people underestimated the task and looked down on being instructed by a slave farmer. When the hunt began, they were assigned the easiest role. but they panicked and fled, throwing the entire plan into chaos. When a boar was about to attack one of them, Rodin protected him by sacrificing himself, resulting in severe injuries. From this incident, Aaron realized he had been doing nothing but focusing on increasing his own strength like it was just a game. For the people in this world, this wasn't a game. They fought desperately to survive in a cruel reality. From that moment on, Aaron vowed to protect his family. Since Rodin had not yet fully recovered, Aaron took over part of his responsibilities. He carried large amounts of water, something even adults struggled to do. He also learned how to harvest potatoes with Gerda to replace his pregnant mother. Although the harvest was successful, Aaron felt frustrated when the Baron took more than half as tax that same day. The village chief visited Rodin and brought along the villager responsible for the incident. The man sincerely apologized and admitted his mistake, promising never to repeat it. Rodin forgave him but firmly warned him to be more careful. He wanted to hunt again. Teresia added that the mistake had nearly cost her husband his life, and regardless of social status, the man needed to understand that Rodin had a family. Soon after, other villagers came to visit, bringing food and medicine to show their support. After the potato harvest, Aaron began thinking about supplies for winter. He wanted to stockpile food to ensure his family's survival. He started by clearing bushes and summoning hoppers as bait, then set traps to catch ducks or wild birds. However, what appeared was no ordinary bird. When he activated the provocation skill, an Albaheron B-rank monster suddenly appeared. It immediately wiped out all the hoppers he had summoned. Seeing how powerful it was, Aaron initially considered running away. But when he realized his enhanced skill had reached level 2, he decided to fight. He attacked using stones and a wooden sword, while summoning a pack of dogs to restrain the monster. However, it wasn't enough. All his summoned creatures were defeated, and Aaron himself was devoured by the bird monster. Still, Aaron continued fighting. He summoned a caterpillar to drain the bird's energy, then called the dogs again to restrict its movement. Finally, he struck the bird's head with his wooden sword. This time, he succeeded in defeating the Albaheron and gained 100 XP, his first monster kill. After winning, he brought the Albaheron back to the village for his family. Gerda was amazed that Aaron had defeated such a monster with just stones and a wooden sword, though he was puzzled by the bite marks on its body. To keep his abilities secret, Aaron made up an excuse that the bird had landed by chance and was bitten during the struggle. Since Rodin was still recovering, Gerda helped drain the monster's blood. He explained that its weight dropped from 60 kilograms to 20 kilograms after draining, and only half of it was edible. Most of it had to be given to the village chief due to a 60% tax even for wild monsters. Gerda also showed that the Albaheron had a magic stone that could be sold for a high price. Considering Aaron's situation, he planned to request a tax reduction. Aaron, however, had his own plan to avoid high taxes. When meeting the village chief, he learned that the Baron had demanded more meat this year. Still feeling guilty about Rodin's incident, the chief only took the wings and magic stone, leaving the rest for Aaron's family. However, one Albaheron wasn't enough for winter supplies, so Aaron went hunting again using the same strategy. This time, he lured 2 Albaherons at once. When they landed, he secured the hoppers and drained their energy using his caterpillar. As they weakened, he threw stones at their heads, then ordered the dogs to knock them down so he could finish them with his wooden sword. With this method, he successfully defeated both monsters without losing any summons and gained 200 XP, reaching the maximum XP. Aaron leveled up to level 2 after leveling up. His HP and MP fully recovered. However, his stat increase was only 60% of what it should have been, so the benefits weren't very significant. Even so, Aaron was happy it was his first level up. He began to think that it might be time to tell his parents about his abilities. After bringing the Albaherons home, he continued training swordsmanship with Krina while planning his next move. Because the Albaheron were migrating, Aaron planned to reach level 3 by hunting 20 more of them. While he was thinking about this, Krina suddenly snuck up behind him and struck his head. That night, Aaron told his parents that when he was 1 year old, he had received a revelation from a god. He had been granted power and wisdom, making him smarter and physically stronger than the average person. However, at the same time, he was also given a harsh trial. When his wounds suddenly disappeared, Rodin realized that Aaron had passed one of those trials that very day. Understanding this, Rodin and Teresia fully supported their son's journey. However, Aaron was asked to keep this a secret to prevent unwanted incidents except from Gerda, who often boasted about his talented child. During winter, Aaron and Gerda went to the city to trade and buy daily necessities. On the way, Aaron told Gerda that he had been both blessed and tested by a god. Gerda had already suspected that Aaron was no ordinary child, but he didn't expect him to be on such a different level. he said. No wonder Rodin was so excited, since it was Aron's first time trading in the city. Gerda decided to teach him the basics of commerce. He also explained the general rule of a 60% tax imposed on slaves. While commoners were exempt, Aron then asked how to escape slave status. Gerda replied that one must either pay a tribute of 10 gold coins or be directly granted commoner status by the baron. Since his family would soon grow, Aron estimated he needed about 50 gold coins to free them all. At the shop, Gerda exchanged 5 bundles of dried boar meat, while Aron traded 5 bundles of albaharan meat. From this experience, Aron began to understand the barter system. 1 bundle of dried meat could be exchanged for 4 days' worth of firewood or several fruits. Even so, Aron wanted to conduct deeper market research. He calculated the exchange value of meat for various goods and compared the value between gold and silver coins. In conclusion, to collect 50 gold coins, he would need to hunt around 500 albaharan. According to his calculations, this could be achieved within a few years, and he felt optimistic about freeing his family. Next, Aron visited a herbal shop to look for Mueller's flowers, the same ones Gerda had used to treat his father. However, the shop owner refused to sell them cheaply, complaining that the last time he sold one, he suffered a huge loss. At that moment, Gerda suddenly entered and demanded the best medicine. Coincidentally, the seller did have a Mueller's flower, but he set the price at 5 gold coins after being pressured. The seller eventually gave in and sold it at a lower price. Aron realized how great Gerda's sacrifice had been for his father. Since the shop owner had contributed to saving Rodin, Aron gave him a bundle of meat for free as a token of gratitude and promised to bring more in the future. After that, Aron visited a blacksmith. Upon arrival, he was confronted by a boy with an axe who turned out to be the blacksmith's son. At first, Aron didn't want to get involved, but when the boy pushed him, Aron lost his temper and decided to teach him a lesson. Holding up his wooden sword, he challenged the boy to a duel. The boy went inside to retrieve his weapon and then attacked with full force. Thanks to his axe skill, his attacks were quite strong. However, it was nothing compared to Aron, who was used to dueling someone like Krina, the Sword King. As the boy began to struggle, Aron easily defeated him. Still, the boy refused to accept defeat and challenged Aron to another duel the next day. Not long after, Gerda and Rodin informed everyone that the village chief wanted to increase the wild boar tribute to the baron from 10 to 15 animals. To meet this demand, Aron began devising a strategy that involved common villagers in the hunt. On another day, the villagers prepared for a hunt, and this time Aron joined them. However, since he was still a child, his father did not allow him to hunt directly. Aron was only responsible for planning strategies and supervising others. At the same time, the men whom Rodin had saved a year ago apologized once again and even asked Rodin to ignore him. Something happened in the future. However, Rodin told him to stay calm and focus on his role. As they left the village, Aron saw mountains where a white dragon was said to live. From those mountains, wild boars descended every autumn in search of food. Soon, the hunt began. In this strategy, two people acted as bait. One team blocked from the front, and attack teams came from both sides. When the boar was immobilized, the beginner stepped in to finish it off. In a short time, the boar was defeated. Aron hoped to gain XP from the hunt, but he received nothing. Meanwhile, the beginners leveled up immediately. It seemed the system did not count Aron's contribution since he was only observing. On another day, while drawing water, Aron asked a villager to persuade his father to let him use a spear in the hunt. However, the man refused, fearing Rodin's anger. Since another villager couldn't join the hunt because his wife was pregnant, Aron asked him to help butcher his albaharan catches instead. This way, Aron could save money instead of going to a butcher in the city. He planned to sell the meat and collect money to free his family from slavery. Over time, the number of boar hunters increased. If things continued to go well, they could even split into 2 teams to increase their results. In the next hunt, Aron technically participated in battle. Even without direct involvement, his level could still increase as long as his summoned creatures touched the boar. 3 months later, Aron and Krina attended the birthday party of the village chief's child. Aron brought a bottle of drink as a gift, while Krina received a bag of candy. That night, the families of Rodin and Gerda had dinner together. During the gathering, Aron shared that the village chief was very grateful because the required boar quota had been fulfilled. According to Rodin, this success was largely thanks to Aron's strategy in training the beginners. During the conversation, Gerda noticed that Aron had brought a special bottle. Aron explained that it was an alcoholic drink gifted by the village chief. Hearing this, Rodin and Gerda became very excited. Aron took advantage of the situation to make a deal. He said the drink was his reward, and he would give it to them if Rodin and Gerda could defeat him. However, if Aron won, he wanted permission to use a spear in boar hunting. Rodin realized he had been outsmarted by his son, but he accepted the challenge anyway in the contest. Aron had prepared many cards to boost his physical strength. With that power, he easily defeated Gerda. Next, he faced his father unexpectedly. Rodin was far stronger than him, even at his current level. Aron couldn't match his father's strength after losing. Aron handed over the drink and still wasn't allowed to hunt boars until he could defeat Rodin. From that arm wrestling match, Aron gained a clearer picture of their strength. According to his estimates, Gerda's stats were around rank D, while his father's were around rank C. However, when Gerda started getting drunk, Aron was surprised to find that his wife's strength was even higher than he had expected. Now 7 years old, Aron's summoning level increased again, unlocking the requirements to summon a new type of rank E monster. Since his MP was still full, he could experiment freely at the same time. He noticed a new skill called item storage. With this ability, he could store various objects inside a storage system within his skill book. Aron began experimenting after storing various items. He concluded that the storage system had no apparent limit. This struck him as strange. In his view, item capacity was an important aspect of any game. He didn't understand why he had been given something like a god-tier warehouse at this stage. Normally, such an ability would only be obtained when truly needed. Still, instead of overthinking it, Aron decided to try summoning a rank E creature. He attempted to summon a rank E insect, but failed because the requirements weren't met. To summon it, he needed sufficient MP and magic stones. Fortunately, he had already stockpiled some magic stones at home. He quickly retrieved them and placed them into his storage. Once all conditions were fulfilled, he successfully summoned a large butterfly. In addition, Aron managed to summon a beast resembling a saber-toothed tiger, which he named Tama after obtaining Tama. He continued summoning and succeeded in acquiring a rank E bird. However, to unlock another new monster type, he needed more magic stones while playing. Aron asked the village chief's child about magic stones. Palomas explained that magic stones were small gems located near a monster's heart. They were usually used to power magical tools. Higher rank stones were highly valuable in the capital, while low rank ones were considered trash and often scattered on the ground. After learning this, Aron decided to search for magic stones around the village. With the help of the villagers, he managed to collect many of them. He also created all available summoning cards and now only needed to study each of their abilities. Suddenly, one of the cards activated after being blown by the wind. At the same time, a wild boar charged at Aron. Instantly, one of his summoned creatures took the hit, injuring Aron, while the others worked together to defeat the boar. The same thing happened when a second boar appeared and targeted him. However, not long after, all the creatures vanished from sight. Because everything happened so quickly, Aron even wondered if it had all been a hallucination over the past 7 years. He had been constantly thinking about how to properly play the role of a summoner. He realized that he had the potential to command an unmatched army of monsters, one capable of overcoming any situation and defeating any enemy. It was an absolute power that could even surpass that of a demon king. On another day, the village chief summoned them. This time, he announced that Baron Biren would be visiting the following month. The Baron wanted to witness the wild boar hunts in their village firsthand. Rodin had no objections, but he questioned why Aron was also being invited. The chief explained that they needed a guide to accompany the Baron during his stay and hoped Aron could assist from the dinner reception to the hunting day. Although Aron didn't care much about the Baron, he saw this as an opportunity to gain recognition and improve his social status. Therefore, he agreed. Baron Biren Grenfeld arrived in Krina village with his daughter. He expressed his appreciation for the villagers' hard work in developing the settlement, noting that no region had grown as rapidly as Greenville in the past 15 years. He also apologized for the increased demand for boar meat, explaining that it was an order from the king and influenced by a noble named Colonel. To lighten the mood, a meal was served. After tasting it, both Biren and his daughter Cecil loved it. When asked about the dish, Aron explained that it was albaharan meat prepared with herbal seasoning. Biren initially thought Aron was the village chief's son, but when corrected, Cecil was shocked to learn that Aron was a slave. Normally, slaves were not allowed in the reception room. Biren quickly clarified that slaves were also his people and should not be looked down upon. However, Cecil remained displeased and looked at Aron with disdain. The Knight Commander then expressed concern about the next day's hunt, stating that capturing 20 boars in a year was extremely difficult if the villagers failed. The Knights would take over to prove otherwise. Aron confidently stated that 20 was a small number and that they would demonstrate it the next day. The following day, the Knights arrived at the hunting grounds, while the Baron's group observed from a tower. The hunters prepared themselves with full equipment made from last year's boar hides and bones. The big team wore lighter gear for mobility. Soon, a boar was lured in upon entering the hunting area. It was trapped between two crystal walls while the front line attacked with spears. Targeting its neck, the vital point rodent delivered the finishing blow. Cecil, who had been arrogant, was left speechless, while Baron and the knight captain were impressed by their skill. According to the captain, they might not be knights, but they were worthy of being called soldiers. Not long after, two more boars chased the bait team. The captain ordered his men to assist, but Arn stopped him, explaining that the hunters were trained for this, following their strategy. They split into two groups 10 years ago. They couldn't have done this but thanks to Arn's strategies and training. The hunting process had become far more efficient after defeating 3 boars. Arn explained that 7 had already been captured before the Baron's arrival, leaving only 10 more to be completed next month. Hearing this, the Baron was relieved there was no need for knight assistance. At that moment, Arn made 2 requests. First, he asked permission to build 2 additional shield walls. Second, he suggested importing goods from outside the village to prevent meat prices from collapsing due to surplus supply. Impressed by his reasoning, the Baron praised him and promised to consider it before leaving. Cecil warned Arn not to become arrogant after being praised. Arn disliked her attitude and hoped they would never meet again. However, a few days later, Arn and his father were summoned by the Baron. After witnessing the villagers' hunting abilities, the Baron decided to reward them. He elevated Rodin's and Gerda's families to commoner status. In addition, all villagers who had participated in the hunts over the past 10 years would receive the same reward. This news made Arn incredibly happy. He was finally free from slavery and could now hunt beyond the village. His first goal was the White Dragon Mountains. He was eager to hunt dragons there. The Baron then stated that the king wanted to promote Krina village as a model example and asked about the origins of their hunting methods. Since it was a sensitive topic for Rodin, Gerda stepped forward to explain in the past. About 100 slaves had been relocated to the village to cultivate land. Before autumn, a disaster struck. Giant boars attacked and devoured their winter supplies. To prevent starvation, Rodin proposed hunting the boars for food. With no proper weapons or knowledge, all the men united to hunt using farming tools. They succeeded in killing 1 boar, but it cost a life. Rodin's close friend. The Baron apologized for bringing up such painful memories. Despite the loss, the village would not have survived without Rodin's brave decision. To honor him, the Baron offered 1 more reward. Arn jokingly suggested asking for alcohol, but Rodin instead requested that his son be allowed to work at the Baron's residence. He said Arn was far more intelligent and would surely be useful. The head butler, Sebas, agreed, and seeing Arn's intelligence, the Baron appointed him as a personal attendant. Cecil objected, still looking down on him. But since Arn was now a commoner, she couldn't refuse. In truth, Arn didn't want the job. Working at the Baron's residence meant losing his freedom to hunt. He tried to find a reason to refuse, but when he saw his father crying with happiness, he couldn't bring himself to reject it and ultimately accepted. The next day, Arn said goodbye to his family. Before leaving, he dueled Krina one last time. In that match, Arn managed to corner her. He had used many magic stones to boost his agility to match hers. In the end, he defeated her, but he declared it a draw so they could settle it next time. Hearing that, Krina smiled and promised that next time, she would be the one to win. After bidding farewell to the villagers, Arn set off toward the Baron's residence.